You see, look, this is really the Conservatives rubbing it in now with this social media posts and the whole issue. It wasn't so bad with local websites, right? And I think this is the issue. When YouTube and Facebook appeared suddenly in 2005 onwards, right? And it was like introducing the whole world together on one platform, not UK-only websites or political party-only websites, right? You've got problems, right? And these MPs, they're really fighting it, right? Here, Andrew Rosendale MP here, right? He's going to look a brilliant start to 2025 in Romford with an action day across the constituency to deliver our New Year's newsletters and calendar to local residents, right? The Conservatives are the only local party who work for local people in Romford all year round, not just election time, right? Happy New Year to all. But he's promoting the Conservative Party. He's not promoting himself as Andrew Rosendale MP, right? He's saying that. He's saying the Conservatives are working for Romford. Now, this is his fatal error. He's saying the Conservatives are working for Romford, but they're not. The Conservative Party cannot act in anything in Parliament because it's a political party. It is not a member. The Andrew Rosendale MP himself can act for constituents, right? But the Conservatives aren't acting for the constituents. If the Conservatives were acting for constituents, right, they wouldn't need an MP. They wouldn't need anyone elected into Parliament. The Conservative Party, you could just ring them up, right, and they could do your casework, right? Hey, ring the Conservative headquarters up, say, can you help me out with this or that? They actually can't without any members of Parliament, right? It's the MP who is an elected MP. Now, he's advertising himself as an MP. Once he's elected, Andrew Rosendale MP is here for you and will serve you and will help you out in your matters. He's making it about the Tories, right? He's actually making it into being about the Conservative Party. And he's saying, oh, we're not only helping you around election time. He can't help you around election time because there aren't any MPs, right? You've got to get into these people's brains. Andrew Rosendale not being a member of Parliament, Andrew Rosendale, the citizen, right, after Parliament is ended or prorogued or he's trying to get elected, cannot help you in Parliament with anything because he's not an MP. He has no power or authority in Parliament for casework, right? And neither is the Conservative Party, right? Only an elected MP can help you, or MPs, right? He's promoting the Conservative Party here, clearly. Now, this is a complete and utter scam, and he's making his own parliamentary service as an MP, right, into being about the political party, and that is completely and totally wrong and illegal. Now, let's just wind back in time, right, because people were less interested in politics, like, before all this social media kicked off, right? So let's go back to, like, the year 2000. In the year 2000, they had web pages, right? You got a web page for a party. So the Conservatives would have their own website, and it was in England, and it was advertising the Conservative Party, right? And their policies. Now, when they ran election campaigns, they're trying to get someone into Parliament, right? They're trying to get someone elected into Parliament, okay? Now, you're not meant to hear anything from the Conservatives, and you're not meant to see them in the newspapers or on radio, hear them or anything, unless there's an election on, and unless they're advertising in relation to a specific election, right? Or that party itself promoting the party, but the party's promoting the party, not the MP, right? because they don't, until you get elected into Parliament, you don't have any MPs, right? So you don't. No one's got the title MP. You promote and advertise in order to get elected, so you can be an MP, right? Once you're an MP, you are meant to detach all association with all election campaigns or anything which promotes a party which can help it in an election. Obviously, you represent and stand for a party in Parliament, right? But you're not meant to be putting out advertisements, circulars and promotions from the member in connection with that. And that's what they're doing here. This actually is what they're doing now, right? And being an elected MP and serving as an MP, right? You're not if you're not a minister of the government, you're not a minister in the government's business, and you are meant to be representing all the people, right? And it's got nothing to do with elections and voting because you've got the position, right? And if they did this, right? If they did this on like in the year 2000 or 2001 on the Conservative Party website, if they had this guy, if they had on the Conservative Party website, which is there to try and get people elected in by-elections and things like that, to have a serving MP appear in photographs and endorse as MP, I am a member of Parliament, right? And I, as a member of Parliament, serving my constituents, I am telling you to vote one way or another, right? To vote for Conservative. That is completely and totally illegal because he's using his office as MP and his contacts, his reach, and a page which is meant to be, he's declared for parliamentary. They've got the contact pages, right? They've got the actual, on Parliament, right? Your contact is meant to be telephone number in Parliament or at a constituency office, a telephone number, an address to write to at an address. And this social media, it's not meant to promote a party or help and assist in an election, but yet they've got these social media advertisements on their Facebook page. It's totally wrong. This is an election offence, right? And Facebook and YouTube have got videos, right, and material that says that you can't disrupt or interfere with elections, right? But this is election propaganda. If the police, if you know what, right? I'll tell you this, right? I'm going to tell you this now. If a police officer appears in any of these photographs, right? If a police officer appears in these photographs, right, endorsing and advertising the Conservative Party in the background, right, or puts his arm around the MP, or puts his thumb up, right, that is a criminal offence under Section 100 of the Representation of the People Act, right? Because a police officer is advocating a political party, right? A police officer is saying okay to this party, right? If a police officer is any of these adverts, but that shows that it's actually promoting a party. And it's not just the MP saying, hey, I'm here for my constituents, right? An MP being here for his constituents is just like, I'm Andrew Rosendale MP and I'm here for you to come to my surgery, right? It's meant to be about him and the surgery because once he's got into office, right, he is there to serve everyone in that constituency, not just Tories, right, and not affect them in their vote. But yeah, he's saying that to vote for the Conservatives and Tories. So this is totally illegal. And this is why I'm getting annoyed with Mark Zuckerberg and Neil Mohan and Sergey Brin and the Advertising Standards Authority and Ofcom and the Electoral Commission. They're not doing anything at all. What actually happened when they created social media, they shouldn't have had MPs going on there, right? But they don't like the fact that people are having political opinions on there, and they want to get in there. They want to get into the thick of it. They want to join in. They want a piece of the action. They want to participate, but it breaks all rules. It breaks all of the election rules. And this is like, Nick Clegg has talked about this with Mark Zuckerberg, right? He's gone, the platforms are racing ahead and they want to press on with technology and, government can't keep up. Yeah, that's it. The government didn't keep up with the legislation. And this is the thing, they should have regulated. What they didn't do is keep up with themselves. They didn't have any discipline on themselves to avoid breaking the rules and social media before they'd sorted the law out. And actually, it's hard to sort the law out. Do you know why? Because if you didn't have any rules for funding and promotion, it would mean effectively that anyone could just completely, Elon Musk could effectively, stand for election and say, boom, on X, he could say, I'm Elon Musk, I'm the most famous person in the world, and everyone on X should vote for me, right? And using his platform to do that is completely illegal. You can't just click your fingers and use all this power that you've got in other things, like power in business or power in other things, just to say, I'm the most popular person and I should be, elected. It's not fair to independent people, to newcomers, to, Joe Blogs. Anyone can stand for election, right? And everyone has to have a fair chance. It's like in a race having someone like, you've got pole position in a race. You get pole position from winning previous races, but you don't have someone in a race who you've given automatically 10 laps around in advance, right? And this is the problem with the Tories and Labour. It's the party wins them the election, right? If you say, I'll stand for Labour because it's easy, because if it's in a Labour area and they've already got people who vote for Labour and they're going to vote for you anyway because it's Labour, it means it doesn't really matter who they really have. Because if it's a Labour area and it's an easy seat to win if you're Labour, unless you put a complete moron on there, right? They're guaranteed to vote for you, or you've got a advantage. So it means that you're standing, the party's winning it for you, and you can't vote for a party without a person, and it's very unfair. And really, fair enough, these parties have got the equivalent of pole position because they're already known, but when it comes to the election time, and then when everyone starts putting their adverts out and things like that, when they're getting this additional adverts from things like this that they've been having all year round, it's not fair. And this is why the news and TV are meant to refer to the Chancellor or the Prime Minister or whatever. It's better to refer to them as their title. I'm off to meet the Prime Minister now, right? Because then you're not advertising them for their names and so forth in elections or their parties. The television's not all constantly promoting the party. And it's almost like the rule where on TV you weren't supposed to mention Sainsbury's or Tesco or whatever because it gives them a competitive advantage commercially. It's not fair, I won't mention that supermarket, but they gradually got slack. And the social attitude has changed where to flaunt the rules, but to the advantage of the big companies. That's how do you think they get big? How do you think Sainsbury's becomes an empire? How do you think Tesco's becomes an empire? How do you think Jeff Bezos becomes the empire? Right? How do you think these parties become the leading parties? If you don't abide by the rules, how can anyone else have a chance? Right? So it really is not fair, and it breaks the rules, right? And even me making this video now, but, you know, these are causes, and this is when you bring in causes and matters to Parliament to complain about it and draw attention to it as something being done wrong. But if I put this on e-petitions, right, this doesn't have to concern one seat, right? Andrew Rosendale, right? If I wanted to challenge him in an election petition within 14 days of the election, I could bring this matter up, right? I could bring this up in an election petition. But apparently you need $5,000 up front and they can bankrupt you, right? Like they did with Graham Moore. But if all MPs are doing this, and if it's a general issue, and if it is like widespread corruption, and it's not just one seat you're contesting, there is a rule in Parliament called the controverted elections rule, right? Controverted elections. And they've got this, you can petition Parliament about it, and you should be allowed to run it on e-petitions, public petitions, to compel people to act. This is what Michael Westwood was complaining about. Labour Party going back on their election promises is something that you can have controverted elections about, a general issue, right? And Jamie Stone, when they debated Michael Westwood's petition, they were collecting a lot of signatures, and they were very close to getting 10% in every area, which is enough to have a recall petition in every area, theoretically, right? And Jamie Stone, effectively, these were his exact words, but effectively he said, oh, only the Prime Minister or King can do anything, and effectively, like, you know, metaphorically, like, nothing's going to come of this, or nothing can be done by Parliament except these two people, the King or Prime Minister, which is wrong. Jamie Stone lied, or he wasn't competent to make that statement, right? The petition was asking for a general election, but it gave evidence of controverted elections, which is that there was a general issue connected to the general election, which Labour went back on its promises. Now, that is a controverted election issue that was raised within that petition. You could have had proceedings in Parliament under the controverted elections rule for it, because he gave evidence that a party that took part in that election wasn't honest, dishonesty, right? Now, you could have had something done about that. If Jamie Stone would have said that, and it would have been apparent to the public that something can be done about this other than Starmer or the King doing something, people would have carried on signing that petition, right? And it would have collected more signatures. But it stopped. And once it, ironically, it stopped when it had got around 8%, something like 7 or 8% of every constituency area nearly signed, right? Which is a lot. In every area. If it had gone over 10% in every area, you could have gone, just a minute. There's over 10% signed in all these areas now. Usually that is enough to say, like, you know, can we have a recall petition, right, for these MPs, right? It's in law, it's a recognised number that can substantiate justifying having one. I'm not saying that it's under the controverted election rules, but you can argue with Parliament that they've set a figure which is acceptable to argue enough to usually have recall, right? So that would be enough if you go in every area to say, you know, either we should definitely have some sort of proceedings here on a controverted election rules, or maybe the Prime Minister should call a general election, right? And have them all recalled. And unfortunately, Jamie Stone deterred people because he made it sound like nothing can come of this unless the Prime Minister or King acts, right? Which I don't think is the full truth of the matter. There is the controverted election rules with general issues, and that is what I'm talking about now. If I submit this under e-petitions and attach this video now, they won't publish it and they won't let me collect signatures on it. And I don't know why that is, because you can have a controverted an election rule petition, and it's got allegations in it. Public petitions are meant to have allegations in them, right? But they're currently only allowing us to have amended and strengthening the laws on public petitions, which I don't know why that is. They seem to believe that, you know, the Commissioner of Standards or the Parliamentary Ombudsman can only deal with wrongdoing. If that's the case, why does it not say in standing orders that, you know, if it's a petition about the wrongdoing of an MP or department, then an MP will sign it and it will be passed off to them, right, under the public petitions rules? It doesn't say that under standing orders, does it? It still accepts all petitions under standing orders. Any petitions will only be the same, right? So this, you know, and what annoys me is that while they've been getting away with doing this, right, for better or worse, because this law breaking can help and hinder elections. It's not meant to neither help nor hinder. It's not meant to help nor hinder. It's not. In fact, it's not meant. There's not meant to be any effect at all, right? So, you know, what Facebook and YouTube are not doing is that they're refusing to actually protect our material, our content for usage of Parliament in individual independent matters, but they're helping and aiding and abetting these MPs. And this goes back to, you know, Nick Clegg is actually, you know, ironically a Liberal Democrat, but Nick Clegg is probably one of the main offenders in this, because he knew about it. He knew deep down about it. He knew the government legislation was behind on it, and he even confessed that with Mark Zuckerberg in a recorded video, which anyone can watch now. And he knew that the platforms had raced ahead and gone too far and had pushed it too quickly against the established law of elections, and they weren't doing anything about it. And he was actually the president of Facebook, global president, and he himself, it turns out, had used an advantage of being a radio presenter during some of his own elections, and no one had called him out on it or prosecuted him within 14 days of his election, right? Because and even if they knew about it, you know, would they have had the money? Would they have had the you know, would they have had the £5,000 deposit? Probably not. You know, this is the thing in Sheffield Hallam. And what gets me most is that the person who Clegg replaced was Lord Allen of Hallam. So there's some kind of joke in there, that there's like an inside joke in that. And then Lord Allen of Hallam ends up leading Ofcom, who is meant to be... Ofcom are meant to be in charge of all this as well. And you've got Baron Grade. And then the Electoral Commission... The Electoral Commission are responsible for this, and they've got powers to take down material. Then the Electoral Commission are the main offenders in this. They are not taking anything down or using that power at all. They're pretending that there's nothing wrong here, nothing to see here, nothing amiss, nothing to see here, right? And then the Advertising Standards Authority, they can't act because, you know, when it comes to political material, they just don't have any powers because it's privileged, but they are meant to have powers when there are certain offences done like this, election propaganda, right? So the Advertising Standards, Guy Parker, are also letting us down, and then Ofcom are letting us down as well. This is why these big government departments that are not elected, they don't have elected people. They're selected, not elected. And they've got hundreds of staff. And they're fully funded by the public. And they're letting these people break the law. And if you think how much money these departments cost to run, right? It's absolutely insane. And these are the things that you normally petition Parliament about and use powers, privileged powers. You'd collect compelling numbers of public signatures. You'd be allowed to air them and put adverts out to raise awareness about it, not just like all brushed under the carpet, like, no one knows what people have submitted to the Electoral Commission unless they choose to publish a report on it, or unless someone puts freedom of information out. It's all hidden to the unsuspecting person, right, unless you start delving deep into it, right? And this is the basis for the Ombudsman. This is the basis for the parliamentary, the House of Commons Commissioner for Standards, right? They're all the people that we elect, and they're democratically accountable to us, and we've got powers to send them material and compel them to act, vote, investigate, call for evidence in committees, and if they don't do the job, then we pull them, we recall them, we get them out if they don't do the job, right? It's all being passed on to these departments with these, permanent secretaries fixed. I complained to the Revenue and Customs over Jim Harver, he ended up being replaced, but have they written to the newspapers? Did they tell them to start taking the VAT off our advertisements when we put them in there? Or are still going to have to argue with the newspapers like London Evening Standard, argue for the VAT. This is where the MPs, you see, that what the MPs are meant to be doing is what Jeremy Corbyn is doing now with those 50 MPs, right? With these prisoners. 50 MPs have signed an open letter asking for something to be done about these prisoners, right? And that's what they're meant to do. Have we got 50 MPs writing an open letter to the newspapers, to the London Evening Standards, to the Sun, to the Daily Mail, to Trinity Press, to say, have you been taking the VAT off political bodies? Like, regardless of if they're big or small, right? And by the way, small ones don't have a VAT number. They aren't required to have one in law, right? But it's still a political body and not for profit, right? Can we get 50 MPs writing to the newspapers? Have the newspapers been committing an offence? Did they do it on purpose? Are they going to be up in front of the Digital Media and Sport Committee answering like Nicola Brooks was, Ginger Brooks, whatever she was, right? Are they going to be up in front of the committees with contempt proceedings? Are we going to get refunded on that VAT? Are they going to raise it in the press so people know about it? Ironically, the place where you would raise awareness about this traditionally, except online, except in Facebook groups, would be the newspapers. So if I ring up the London Evening Standard and I say, hello, London Evening Standard, I'd like to put an advertisement in the newspaper, a petition to the House of Commons. To the Honourables Commons, we're complaining about the newspapers refusing to take our VAT off our newspaper adverts. Can you please act? Mr. Corbyn, can you and 50 MPs write to the newspapers to tell them not to put the VAT on? But what if the newspaper says, oh, we're not publishing that, we're not having that in our newspaper because you're accusing us of breaking the law, right? Will they say, oh, well, we're protected by the Parliamentary Papers Act or whatever or something like that? Well, no, actually, no, you're the ones who are in contempt of Parliament, right? Because if you won't put the advert in, right, you're obstructing a messy civil process of Parliament, right? Contempt against petitioners, and you're charging us a VAT illegally, right? So, who's in charge of these newspapers? Rupert Murdoch. Now we've got Nick Gove in charge of The Spectator. And then, other figures, high-profile figures, ex-MPs, George Osborne being the editor of these newspapers. And what about YouTube and Facebook taking our material down and illegally seizing it, which is a contempt of Parliament? But none of the courts are meant to hear those cases. Because I've been thinking now, look, right, if I had some money now, should I take these platforms to the court? But what's the offence? Well, actually, if the true proper offence is misconduct against petitioners, as per in Erskine May parliamentary practice, that's the offence, right? It's contempt of Parliament. You can't. You're not meant to hear those in the courts. So even if I had any money, I'm not supposed to go to the courts with it. It's meant to be Parliament, and that's meant to be the Attorney General, right? Contempt of Parliament. And, you know, maybe I could get a solicitor to help me put a case together. Maybe I could get a solicitor to put a better argument and put some better evidence and officially submit the petition, you know, and help me unblock all these newspaper blockages and help me, you know, with the platforms. But you're not, it's meant to be before Parliament. Now, this is when we get to the issue with the Attorney General being in place, right? If the Attorney General is in place unlawfully, illegally, right? No wonder we're not getting any action from him on any of this. We're not getting any action from the Attorney General. In fact, when you ring the Attorney General up, they don't think that they're there for the public, right? They don't think that they're there for us. They only think they're there for government departments. But it's the government departments that are breaking the law, right? But then they're like, oh, why don't you contact the Ombudsman? Why don't you contact the, you know, House of Commons Commissioner for Standards? But it's like, well, I'm not contacting them. They aren't doing anything about it, or they don't accept it, or their processors are rejecting our complaints, or saying we've got to submit them separately, or we can't get our MP to sign it, or God knows what reason, right? That's even if your MP, you know, and you know, some of these issues require, you know, MPs are collaborating on these issues at the moment. It's not fair when these prisoners are getting MPs collaborating together, and other people aren't getting the MPs to collaborate together. Now, if it's a local issue, right, like, you know, housing issue, or if, you know, it's just like, oh, you know, I've been mistreated by the police on this or that, or a minor issue, but when it's something that affects every single person in England who is using usage of Parliament, and not just yourself, when it's like every single person who wants to put a newspaper advert in any constituency in England, right? Or when it's anyone on YouTube from any constituency in England, or multiple constituencies, right? It affects all MPs, and MPs actually should be working together on it, not just one MP, if it only affects one area. And this is where we need these MPs to write to YouTube. This is where we need these MPs to write to the newspapers. And I think that we probably would get a resolution from the newspapers if our MPs did write to them, right? And if we don't, then this is when you're meant to have contempt proceedings, because then they've been warned, right? They've been warned that they're not complying with the law. And if they don't, we need these proceedings. So surely that's the Attorney General. But if he's not in position properly, how can we get action? So, you know, I mean, what doesn't this concern? This concerns the legitimacy of the Attorney General. This concerns the newspapers. This concerns the platforms. This concerns the main parties with their adverts on the platforms, Labour and the Conservative. It's all one issue tied in together. And what the issue is that people are raising complaints and we're being either ignored or obstructed, right? And some people are getting help, like 50 MPs signing open letters. And even when the MPs do sign the open letters, those people aren't seeming to get a resolution from Parliament, right? Those people don't seem to be getting a resolution from the Parliament. We've got like David Lammy and Jake Richards and, you know, the assistant Attorney General's assistants, you know, Rachel Reeves, the Prime Minister. So this actually is the ministry, the ministers of government who don't seem to be wanting to act. So we've got a problem, you know, and we can't get these issues to these, you know, there are people on Facebook and YouTube now who've got big channels with 250,000 followers. Russell Brand's got 6 million people. If Russell Brand, right, goes on and says, hey, all right, everyone, Just write to your MP and tell them, you know, what's happening about all these newspapers charging us VAT and as adverts, right? You know, it would be done. Like people would write into their MPs and it would be done. You know, or you know, but Russell Brand's even been abused by the platforms. Russell Brand is a victim. He had the, you know, Lucy. The Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, right? The MP for Cambridge, right? He had her write a letter to the platforms about him because of his legal case when it was none of the platform's business for her to write to about it, right? And it also affected his ability for financial ability to pay for the legal case when there was no verdict from it. And he's also been demonetized by YouTube as Russell Brand, and Russell Brand won't even, you know, say, hey, I'm Russell Brand. You know, it's like, you know, why don't everyone, you know, what's all this going on about, you know, YouTube intervening in parliamentary processes, which is contempt, right? Where are the proceedings for that? You know, why, you know, he won't even help himself or other people, and he's got 6 million people watching his channel. Even people with 250,000 people, you know, there's lists, you know, Graham Moore, Andy the Gabby Cabby, you know, Paul Thorpe, you know, David Icke, Gareth Icke, you know, the list, there's like the rules, you know, you could get if you unroll the list of channels that have got, you know, 250,000 people or more following them, right? They won't speak. They won't even make one video. They've got hundreds of videos, thousands of videos, you know, thousands of followers, verbs. They just won't speak up on behalf of people. If you email them that they just want to do what they're doing, even when they're getting banned themselves, and I don't bloody know why that is. I just don't know why they won't bloody say it and get the people to act, you know. It's happened with these prisoners, you know, there were people doing protests up and down the country, there were people speaking about it, they got 50 MPs to do it. The pressure is on the ministers now, you know, the MPs played their part in it, but it's actually a lot easier for 50 MPs to write to the newspapers, and if 50 MPs write to the newspapers, right, and say, why are you charging people VAT? It will get a response and it will get the solution resolved. If they write to YouTube, it will, right? If the 50 MPs write to YouTube, I think it would be enough to do it. I don't think you need to get the ministers to act, to get, you know, David Lammy or the Attorney General or Starmer or whatever, Rachel Reeves. You won't need to make the ministers act. Elected MPs, when they know something is correct and right, and when they issue an official letter to a company or business, right, it should be acknowledged as much as if, like, the police write to them or whatever, right? And I don't really know why we're not getting that action from these MPs. But the thing is, they've all been duped into this social media revolution, right? All of the MPs, most of them, have all been duped in to this social media revolution. This, like, hey, likes, favourites, followers, you know, it's the cool thing to do. MPs should have a social media channel, right? It's cool, it's the new thing. And even the Green Party and so forth. Yet they didn't think and act with caution and check up on it. And this is exactly on the video, you know, with Mark Zuckerberg and Nick Clegg, you know, the platforms are racing ahead, you know, they need to slow down, they're rushing ahead. No, Nick, right? You're the Deputy Prime Minister of England, ex-Deputy Prime Minister of England, right? If you can't say, Mark, right, I'm the ex-Deputy Prime Minister of England, and, you know, even though I'm not elected anymore, I'm responsible for what Facebook does, right? And we don't want to be advertising these political parties on here. And by the way, we shouldn't be taking down people's political material because it's protected and you don't have Section 230 in England, right? At that point, Clegg would have been acting okay. But when he's like, fannying about. He's like, oh, I'm in an hour. It's like, oh yeah, these platforms are racing ahead, and government's not really keeping up with legislation. Yes, Nick, that's because it's fucking illegal, and you need to stop now and fucking do something about it, Nick, right? And also, these platforms are threatening, they're still threatening to take people's material down in electoral processes and democratic process, Nick, right? That's terrorism. In the 2000 Terrorism Act, if you threaten to intervene in democratic process with a threat, right, it's criminal. It's an act of terrorism. And when you're leading everyone to believe that you can do that when you can't, and you're even putting videos of police up arresting people when they're not allowed to be arrested, right? You're actually a propaganda machine. It is a mass propaganda machine, right? And this is terrorism. Yeah, it's just the average Joe on the street who's getting arrested, not these people who've got all this money, right? And yet it's like, Julian Assange is getting arrested for putting a video out, right, of military, and then all this, detention over years and all this, legal cases, when Mark Zuckerberg and Neil Mohan are severely breaking. They're engaged in widespread terrorism, but everyone thinks that they're all like soft, fluffy, cute bunnies, and they're all doing it for the good of the public, and they're like, oh yeah, no, they're friendly, fluffy, cute, cute little, character platforms and everything like that. Oh, they're doing it for us. They're doing it for the good of humanity. But then they're going, oh no, you can't intervene in elections if you disrupt an electoral process. Put a video out, If we put a video out when you disrupt electoral process, it's very serious, it's very serious. Yeah, you're doing it. Right, we'll try find this video now. Right, I've actually found it now. So if you go through YouTube, right, on elections, here it is. This is actually by YouTube creators. So YouTube have put this video out. Elections misinformation policy on YouTube, right? So this includes, let's put this on.
Types of misinformation that can cause real-world harm go against our community guidelines.
So they're saying that stuff that goes against their community guidelines, right? Their own community guidelines, but they're removing things, electoral processes, right? So they themselves have got a policy that they themselves are breaking, right? And that also, what they're saying is, right, if people intervene or disrupt in electoral processes, it's very serious, right? So they're making out that they enforce the Representation of the People Act, right, in England or the equivalent in America. So here's YouTube going like, this is very serious if you intervene or disrupt in elections, right? Yeah, they've got MPs channels who have got election material. Yeah, it's an MP's channel, right? So that's an election propaganda offence, right? They're not removing it. They're not reporting it to the Electoral Commission. And then what's the equivalent of this for the usage of Parliament? So what is the equivalent of these election offences for other parliamentary processes which are equivalent? Well, that is your Erskine-May, right, section on misconduct against petitioners to deter, disrupt, or intervening, or even give misinformation about petitioners, right? That's a contempt of Parliament. But Parliament aren't holding any proceedings for that. And YouTube are not enforcing it at all. Yeah, they've got this here. I'll copy this link and put it in the description. So until we actually get any proceedings in Parliament for it, we're actually not going to actually get a resolution for it.